me, for inviting me, for welcoming me. I am so happy to be here. I've heard so many wonderful presentations and just feel blessed and honored to be able to be part of this program. I want to, let's see, we've got here. I want to start by acknowledging some of the people that I have worked with over the years at my own university, Indiana State University. My first name is one of my graduate students, and then my colleagues there. I'll be sharing data, research data from a very large study from NIH that I could not have done without Dr. Ruth Walliver, who is at Duke University, who is now at Vanderbilt University. And then our next set of NIH-funded studies were, those Duke studies were also NIH-funded, were at the University of California, San Francisco. My primary colleague was Dr. Alyssa Eppel, but also other associates of hers played incredible, valuable roles in all of this research. We're going to have two parts to this program. And more of the first part is actually going to be giving you some experiential sense of what we mean by mindful eating. And then the next part, and I will be talking about some of the theory, also some of our research findings, but then I'm going to go back into the research that we have done. And by that point, you'll have a better understanding of what the program involves. For this next set of slides, what I want you to do is just look at them. Notice what your feelings are. Notice what your reactions are. You'll see what I mean in a moment. How hungry are people here? We just had lunch. Perhaps not that very hungry. So look at that. I have a close Korean colleague in my Department of Psychology at Indiana State University who helped me get those pictures, I want to say. That is not an American hamburger. Do you want that more or less? So there's no right or wrong answer to how much you might want any one of those dishes or when you would want it. But it is helpful to notice what is calling you. It's also helpful to notice serving sizes. This is a bit of a joke, but in the US, what we call supersizing it has really become an important part of people's choices in food. And I'll be talking about why that has some problems. I've never even seen a hamburger like that, but I do understand they exist. Can't imagine eating it. But then now let's go to the question, what is mindless eating and snacking? Does anybody here ever eat mindlessly? We all do, at times. But how do we perhaps do it less rather than more? What is it? Not paying attention to our physical hunger signals, eating for all other kinds of reasons, which we will do, The food is there. It's noon, it's time for lunch. Well, I had breakfast at 9. I'm not that hungry, but it's time for lunch. Thoughts, I deserve this. Feelings, stressed. Actually, one of the most frequently identified triggers for eating in high school students was boredom. It's also a pretty high one for other people too. Not paying attention to the quality of taste, both at first and as it decreases. Why eat something if you're not tasting it? You might enjoy it more if you do, or perhaps realize you're eating something you don't like very much. Not paying attention to how full you are. Keeping on eating just because the food is there until you're actually uncomfortable. And choosing foods without considering the nutritional value at all. The calories, the fat content, the health effects. We actually make hundreds of small decisions every day about what we want to eat. When, where, what, how much, etc. When do I take the next bite? And which type of food do I choose? And having had the pleasure of eating Korean food for the last few days, and I have been here once before, so I knew what to expect and was looking forward to it. Lunch, we had 10 different foods served to us. I think might have been more. And so choosing those mindfully can actually help us enjoy the food more rather than less. How many of these decisions, though, are highly habitual, conditioned reactions and virtually mindless? So the most common solution to this type of, when it's overeating and you've perhaps put on an extra 20 pounds, I'm sorry, I don't know the kilogram equivalents, 20 pounds, 30 pounds, 50 pounds, 200 pounds, like some of my clients, is going on a diet, and another one, and another one, and another one. Now, they may help in the short term, restricting your food to a much smaller amount, perhaps going from 3,000 calories a day or more, some of the super eaters, a lot more, down to 1,200 calories, you're going to lose weight. You're going to get mad at yourself when you break your diet, which you will do, but you will lose weight if you stay with it. And you may also learn things about healthier alternatives. But you get set up in what I call the good food, bad food mentality, so you're constantly judging yourself. There's a huge sense of deprivation. Almost anybody I've ever talked to, and I will also include myself on that, I've been on a few. This is the main issue. Diets don't teach you how to eat in a balanced or flexible or sustainable way. That's the last one. They cannot be sustained because you're not getting enough food in your body to lose that weight, to keep that going, and you don't learn how to eat at perhaps more consistent with what your long-term goal weight would be. So, as I say, you know how to eat 3,000 calories, you know how to eat half that amount. You don't learn how to eat at a place in the middle that is sustainable, that is fun, that includes every kind of food, but probably in smaller amounts. So the alternatives. There's probably more than just this program, but this is what I'm going to be sharing with you. And I developed this program over the years in several different ways that I will be sharing. So that's what MB Eats stands for, Mindfulness-Based Eating Awareness Training. So mindful eating is paying attention to those physical hunger signals and other eating triggers. Yes, I'm bored, but am I hungry? Okay, I'm bored and I'm hungry, so okay, this is good. I'll have something to eat. Paying closer attention to taste, closer attention to fullness, considering the nutritional values of the food you're eating, and I'll be coming back to this. Fully enjoying your food while you're eating it. Not playing a computer game at the same time, not watching television. If you're eating, eat. If you're eating, enjoy. And this last one, I always get people looking puzzled. Leaving food on your plate if you've had enough. When I've worked with my group or I'm teaching and I say, how do you know when you're done? When my plate is clean. Well, maybe you didn't know how full you were going to get when you put the food on your plate. Or maybe you didn't put it on your plate. Somebody else did. Believe me, the chef in the kitchen has no idea how hungry you are and how much you need. And it's about creating a better balance between eating your body and the rest of your life that I will be coming back to. So here are some of the research foundations for mindful eating. I started this work because I had, when I was still a doctoral student a long time ago, I will give acknowledgments. It was at Yale University. There were some fantastic people I was able to work with. Tuning into research that was being done on the differences between people responding to their inner signals. As I've mentioned, how hungry are you? How full are you? How much do you actually want and like the food? And those external triggers for eating. This was basic research back, you can see the dates there, 1981. Taste, hunger, fullness, satiety, and taste. Dr. Linda Bartoshuk was doing the cutting edge work, and she was at Yale, and I was discovering how much that was being explored. But what I also found is that they were looking at general population. It wasn't being applied to people with eating issues. Partly because the people doing it were not people working with patients with eating problems, whereas that was what I was being trained to do. So what are healthier, flexible eating and eating disorders? I did a study with Dr. Judith Roden, where I created a survey of how were the undergraduates, whom we had access to, deciding how to relate to their food, or reporting to us how they related to their food. And we found 4 separate groups. There was one group that I called balanced eaters. And interestingly enough, they said, yes, I eat more if I'm stressed. You know, I didn't think I did very good on that test today, and so I went and got an ice cream cone. But they balanced it out. And then there was a group, mostly women, who agonized over it. Two groups of women. One group that agonized over it, but they didn't have any kind of eating disorder. And then another group that did have eating disorders, but they were still not relaxed about their eating. And so I got a lot of understanding of how flexible, healthier eating patterns can be. They aren't black and white. They aren't rigid. They are flexible. And people would enjoy those ice cream cones. There was then growing knowledge about mindfulness meditation and treatment of anxiety, depression, and addictive disorders. My professor at Yale, Dr. Gary Schwartz, one of his students, Richard Davidson, who you've seen actually been referred to a number of times while he was still a professor at Harvard, was doing really brilliant, they were doing brilliant work on the psychological value of mindfulness meditation. Although I had actually already been introduced to meditation, some of you may know this, it was transcendental meditation. It had a huge value and effect on me, but I was just becoming aware of mindfulness meditation and frankly was being drawn to it more than the work I was been doing with transcendental meditation. That first study down there, that isn't working, though was also a study where we found that undergraduates that we taught mantra-based meditation, drawn from TM, Transcendental Meditation, was in 3 sessions, 3 brief sessions, over a 2-week period, we could train undergraduates at the University of Wisconsin to lower their heart rates by just giving them 3 experiences of mindfulness meditation, of mantra-based meditation. And then when I started working with Jon Kabat-Zinn at the University of Massachusetts Medical School, we found that the effects on anxiety, which had been, we knew that meditation helped with anxiety. What we found in this study was that it actually took people who had anxiety disorders, and within the 8 weeks of the program, actually cured most of them, which was amazing. And then a number of years later, after I left UMass Medical School and went to Indiana State University, I had the opportunity to work further with Jon Kabat-Zinn's program, and we found huge value and effects on people's spiritual well-being. And in a way that showed that increase in spiritual engagement was powerful in actually improving the increase in some of the other effects of the mindfulness meditation program. And we found that also in the MBE program. I'll come back to a little more detail about some of these studies, as I said, a little later. So again, to come back to some of the theory, mindlessness is that habitual reactivity. We all have it. We all need it. Our brains work extremely quickly. And that's fine, that's good. We're constantly looking for information around us to make use of and respond to or react to. And we attach meaning to it. Is it good? Is it bad? Do I want more? Do I want less? Am I craving something, or am I going to do the best I can to avoid it? There's a spider crawling across the floor, and it's a big one. And much of that happens actually without that much awareness. You're starting to cross a street and suddenly you hear the horn. You want to back up as quickly as possible. Not stand there and, do I want to back up or not? Better get out of the way. So reactions are triggered as rapidly as possible. When that reactivity happens, though, and we do become aware of it, there is a sense of loss of control often, loss of choice, and emotional distress. So to come back to the value of mindfulness now. This is a definition offered by Jon Kabat-Zinn, who is often considered the father of contemporary mindfulness-based clinical work in the United States and elsewhere. Mindfulness, moment-to-moment, non-judgmental, very important word, awareness cultivated by paying attention. We've been hearing about this from so many of our previous speakers in the last 2 days. I've added to this some. A cognitive state marked by attentional stability that disengages those habitual reactions and allows for inner wisdom to emerge. Is this completely new to psychology? Not really. But this is part of what I love about what is being contributed to psychology from Eastern philosophies. This is William James, who is often considered the father of psychology. Each of us literally chooses by his way of attending to things what sort of universe he shall appear to himself to inhabit. Written in 1918. So meditation as awareness. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly because I think you've now realized that you've been introduced to them. Focusing on an object, often repetitive, in mindfulness, the breath. A physically awake state, it's not about going in. Can be, but that's not what we're talking about if you're trying to eat. Quiet, detached noting of other thoughts, experiences as they arise, feelings. A gentle return to the original point of focus whenever attention has wandered. So what you're doing is you're increasing awareness of, and you're shifting from reaction to response in a wide range of functioning. So there's different stages. The first stage is that awareness of the reactive process that you're having, very relevant to food intake. The second stage, disengaging that automatic reactivity. And then emergence of that alternative, or several alternatives that are from your wiser mind. And that happens in whatever area you might be engaging with. We're talking about eating right now. So I like to use this slide to show how broad the effects are. And then I'll show actually how all of these also relate to eating. Cognitive, attention awareness, physical, relaxation, neuroregulation. Emotional, that reduced reactivity, uncovering positive emotions. Behavioral, impulse control, and deconditioning. Self and others, acceptance, connectedness, both of others and yourself, and spiritual, inner peace. I've done about 6 studies looking at the relationship of mindfulness and spirituality, and it's very consistent. Now, how do all these relate to eating? They do. Cognitive, awareness of that reactivity to food cues, quieting the mind, less black and white thinking, more non-judgmental awareness. Physiological, of course, reducing stress, but without overeating. Maybe going to that ice cream, but having a small bowl, not the whole container. Better use of hunger, taste, and fullness signals, I'll be coming back to. Emotional, less depression and more joyful eating. Behavioral, that's pretty obvious. Relationship to self and others, greater self-acceptance. And I have forgiveness of others there because in the groups that I've run, and I've run many of them for MB Eat, one of the triggers for overeating people will share is anger. And anger that may have gone back to childhood. But also I'll say, what do I do when I go home for the holidays and my mom is going to be very upset if I don't eat everything that she prepared for us? I said, so if you put on a few pounds over Christmas, big deal, right? Have that second piece of cake. You can make up for it later. Tell her how fabulous something was after you've had one piece, and can you have the recipe? And spiritual, connecting with a wiser self and with meaning, purpose, peace, and purpose. Now, staying with the element of the self, I'd like you to take a piece of paper. You could use the back of the handout that was being handed out at the door about the program, or you can take another piece of paper. Just draw a circle on it, the circle of self, and think to yourself, what percentage of your day do you spend thinking or worrying about your eating, your weight, your body? What number comes to you? Write it down, and perhaps if, say, it was 50-50, you draw a line down the middle of the circle. If it was 25-75, you draw a quarter of it. Whatever it is, believe me, I'm not going to be collecting them, and we're going to come back to them later. So just put that aside for now, but you'll see why we're coming back to it. So let me give you a little overview of what we have in the program. Nothing's going to be too surprising here. Learning mindfulness and how to bring it into eating experiences. Everybody learns to do mindful meditation practice in our program. Learning to pause for a moment to check in on physical hunger and versus other triggers. Mindfully choosing foods for both enjoyment and nutritional value. We do, partway through the program, we do a potluck where people bring in, everyone who's in the group, say 10 or 12 people, bring in 2 foods to share with everyone else. One of them is supposed to be a healthier food. And by the time we do that, they know what I mean. The other is supposed to be a more just indulgent food. Maybe they already eat it or overeat it, but they want to keep it in their list of foods that they want to have pleasure from. So to bring that in also. We try and make sure that everybody isn't bringing in cake, but it varies. Tuning into taste and pleasure from moment to moment instead of guilt or the television or whatever while you're eating. And choosing mindfully when to stop eating. Learning to be both balanced and flexible and to relate to food and food choices in a way that is sustainable. So the inner wisdom, I'm going to go through this quickly. It's pretty much repeating. But for people who are, we run programs that are for people with binge eating disorder, eating excessively large amounts of food, either for a snack or a meal, at least once a week. Food-related meditations, raisins, chocolate, cheese and crackers, potluck meal and buffet, and we have some others. Mini meditations with daily meals and snacks. Mini meditations, if you're aware, there are some programs that they call a brief meditation, a 3-minute meditation. We can say, you can take 3 seconds. You just stop, you focus, you make a choice, even about the next bite. You don't need to take 3 minutes to do that. Forgiveness and wisdom meditations, and letting go of that weight and eating preoccupation, which I just gave you an introduction to. And at home, meditation practice and mindful eating practice. So let me give you another tool here. What we do is we ask people to actually have come into the into that session. It's, by the way, it's 8 sessions plus 2 follow-up sessions, or actually there's variations, but I'll say 10 sessions and 2 follow-up sessions is more standard. We ask them to start to notice how hungry they are, physically hungry. How physically hungry. On a 1 to 10 scale, with 10 being as hungry as they could imagine, and 1 being not hungry at all. And this uses a tool within psychology that actually began with using this kind of scale for people to look at pain that they were experiencing. And if you've been asked, in the States, most people have been asked that question if they've been to their doctor with anything around pain. On a 10-point scale, how strong is your pain? It can be applied to lots of things. And how full are you? These overlap. They're 2 different processes in our bodies. For example, someone might say, well, I'm sort of hungry. I'm like at a 4. And, oh, yeah, I think I want a snack. And I'm going to have some popcorn. Well, popcorn, especially the healthier popcorn, doesn't have that many calories in it, but you're going to be feeling pretty full after you've had that whole bag of popcorn. Now, what if you take the same number of calories, 250, say, and it's 3 cookies? You're also going to be less hungry, but you aren't going to be very full. So they're two different scales. Now, what is taste satiety? That's actually one of the most important parts of being a mindful eater. We have thousands of taste buds in our mouths. They have 5 different types: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and savory, using a Japanese word, umami. Our taste buds get tired. They get tired actually in 2 stages, pretty quickly and then longer. And that's what is meant by taste satiety. I apologize, I don't know what that word is in Korean, but it's a word that actually we don't use that often in English either. And I have to explain it and spell it for most people. And it happens in 2 phases. After the first few bites, and then after about a portion size. But you gotta be paying attention. Being aware of these changes helps people stop eating sooner and is an important part of mindful eating. Now, we are about to give you the experience of mindful eating. We got ready? Okay. The staff is going to be handing out little boxes of raisins.
네, 지금 건포도를 뒤에서 지금 나눠드리고 있거든요. 지금 강연 내용에 맞는 그 MB 이트 실습을 하려고 합니다. 그래서 일단 받아두시고요. 우리 강연자님의 지시에 따라 주시기 바랍니다.
You can open them, but do not eat any yet. Yeah, what you can do when you have the box is take out 4 raisins. Just 4 raisins. Then put the box aside. And someone will let me know when everybody's got their little box of raisins. Okay? We're okay? Wonderful. So take out your 4 raisins. Now hold them in one hand. And I'd like you to just sit in your chair where you are in a balanced, upright position. And I'd like you to close your eyes. Just closing your eyes, bring your awareness to the feeling of the breath at the tip of your nose. Breathing in 2 or 3 deeper breaths, feeling the air flowing in cool, flowing out warmer. Flowing in cool, flowing out warmer. I'd like you to take a moment to reflect on your feeling of hunger at this right now, on that 1 to 10 scale. How hungry are you? There is no right or wrong answer. And then again, on the fullness scale, how full are you? With 10 being as full as you can imagine, and 1 being not full at all. And then I'd like you to, staying in this position, just gently look back up on the board, and you'll see, you'll see a taste meter. And see that for the taste, we use a meter, and so it's the same 10 points. But what we found is because taste can vary, we liked using the meter better. We actually used this with children. That's when we started using it, and they really liked it. So coming back, closing your eyes again for a moment, coming back to your breath. And taking a look now at the raisins in your hand and choosing 1 raisin. 1 raisin. Keeping in that space of gentle mindfulness. Picking up the raisin and looking at it carefully. No 2 raisins are alike. looking at it with a sense of curiosity, appreciation. And then closing your eyes and bringing this little piece of fruit up to your nose and smelling it. And then opening it in your mouth and placing the raisin in your mouth without chewing down. Just for a moment or two, experiencing it in your mouth. How is your mouth responding or reacting? And then slowly begin chewing it. Slowly begin chewing it. Noticing any urge to swallow, but resisting that. Just keep chewing it, noticing the taste on the top of, or sensations on the top of your mouth, on your tongue, on the sides of your mouth. Noticing where that pleasure satisfaction meter has gone. How high has it gone? What number is it from 1 to 10? And when you've gotten as much pleasure as you can from this one little raisin, choosing to swallow it and bringing this little piece of nutrition into your body. And after you swallow, just bringing your awareness back to the breath again. Perhaps noticing any flavors that are left in your mouth. Sense of pleasure. And when you're ready, opening your eyes again and looking at the 3 raisins left in your hand, and choosing a second raisin. Choosing a second raisin. And now looking at that raisin. As I said, no 2 raisins are alike. How is this one similar? How is it different? Again, after you've looked at it, closing your eyes, bringing it back up to your nose, smelling it. Is it the same? Or perhaps it's different. That's okay. Just noticing. Then again, placing it in your mouth without chewing. Noticing how your mouth is responding. Is it the same as with the first one or different? Just noticing. And now slowly begin chewing. Again, noticing how your mouth is responding. Where is it responding most in your mouth? As you continue to chew, noticing that taste meter. Perhaps the pleasure has gone higher. Perhaps it's stayed the same. Perhaps it's gone lower. No 2 raisins are alike in that either. And when you've gotten all the pleasure from that second raisin, choosing to swallow and bringing this little piece of nutritional fruit into your body. Keeping your eyes closed for another moment. You might check in with your hunger again. Has that number changed? And now, I'd like you to lead yourself through eating the 3rd raisin. Lead yourself through eating the 3rd raisin. fully experiencing it. Gaining as much pleasure from it as you can. And when you have finished getting as much pleasure as you, no, don't forget to notice that taste meter. When you've gotten the pleasure you can from it, choosing to swallow, bringing it into your body. And now I'd like you to consider whether you want the fourth raisin. Whether you want the fourth raisin. If you want the fourth raisin, can you raise your hand? Okay. If you don't want the fourth raisin, can you raise your hand? Yeah, that's about what I usually find. And because we're a little short on time, I'm going to leave it up to you how you're going to eat that fourth raisin, if you want it. And we're going to come back now to some more of the program. The outer wisdom that we use is nutrition guidelines. I've had people tell me they don't eat sweets, they don't want to eat a raisin. I say, do you know how many calories are in one raisin? Like 2 or 3? Yeah. Well, how do we usually eat raisins? By the handful. That's a lot more, but we only ate 3 or 4. I had some guy at a program that I was running say, I have diabetes, I'm not supposed to eat sweets. Well, luckily his doctor was in the room, and she said, it's fine. You can eat 4 raisins. We're quality, outer wisdom again, putting quality over quantity. We're a little short on time, so I can't re-elaborate on that, but that's an ongoing intention and goal of the program. Quality over quantity. Calorie awareness, calorie needs, exercise planning. We address all of those. Adapting to personal preferences and patterns. And all of these to be used in a self-accepting, flexible, non-judgmental way, very different from most weight loss diets. And I've used the program with many, many people, many range of people in our California studies. We screened out people who had any kind of binging problem. But other groups have been only with people with binge eating disorders. Some have been with people without any weight issues, but they still wanted to do the program. Oops, wrong. So the other thing about the outer wisdom, my mouth is watering at that. But that looks more appealing than just the strawberries. So maybe what's in the middle? Something like that. So to consider the choices that you have. So again, I'm coming back, mindful eating, quality over quantity. So I'm going to quickly go through some of our research. We had a NIH-funded randomized clinical trial For people with binge eating disorder, we compared MB Eat to a waitlist group and a psychoeducational program that was being run very effectively and successfully at Duke University. We varied it. We had 150 people, average age of 46, average weight 109 kilograms, 240 pounds. Everyone had binge eating disorder. I've already identified what that means. We had a 9-week program, including some work with body awareness, and followed people up at 1 and 4 months, and a lot of different assessments. You'll see some of them. So we had a significant improvement in the binge eating disorder. 95% of the MBE group were no longer meeting criteria for binge eating disorder versus 76% of the other group. And the binges were significantly smaller in the MBE group if they occurred. Improvement was correlated with the amount of mindfulness practice that they did. They had to track it every week and turn that into us. We were a little puzzled by this. There was no average significant weight loss, but a large variation. About a third lost over 10 pounds or 5 kilos at 4 months, but some gained weight. We interviewed them about why that was and what was going on. And we also found that there was improvement in HbA1cs. It was related to decreases in binge episodes, not to the weight change. Just something to keep in mind if you're working in this area. And that's what we found. This is a measure of the power of food scale. I don't have the reference up there. If you're interested, you could contact me. So the control group didn't have anything, didn't change. The psychoed group was in the middle. The MB Eat group was the best and stayed much better on that measure. This is just what I mentioned about the change in the size of binges in the MBE group. If people reported any binges at all, most of them were small ones. That's the green color. Whereas in the PECB group, only 24% were small. And the waitlist, of course, that was what they started with. Some correlations, something called a binge eating scale. The decreases on that were highly correlated, that's in the first column, highly correlated to the degree people used those mini meditations while they were actually eating, 0.51%, correlation of 0.51, highly significant. And when we combined the amount of meditations they were using altogether, that correlated with all the primary outcome measures, including weight loss. So we found that the people who didn't lose weight were less likely to actually be doing the meditations. Again, I'm going to zip through this, but this is the relationship of HbA1cs correlated to change in number of days of binge eating, no correlation with change in weight, and it stayed the same when we controlled for weight change. And again, if you have particular interest in this, I can come back to it. Then we had, based on the study, the results from that study, we did a larger NIH-funded trial where we had only 2 groups, the MBE group with a little more focus on weight loss, waitlist group, sample size 117, average age of 49, almost 50, and again with a body mass index, they had to have a BMI of at least 35 to be in the program, and 25% with binge eating disorder. We wanted to compare what we had found in the other study on binge eating disorder, but we didn't want to exclude other people. 12-week intervention, more on nutrition, diet information, and weight loss components, and we followed them out to 6 months. Extensive other measures. I'm going to zip on through here. The results of those, we were afraid that possibly people with binge eating disorder wouldn't like the addition of some of the nutrition and education. It didn't make any difference. They were highly parallel, and we had similar success as in the other program, and on a measure of what's called cognitive restraint around eating. There was a sustained weight loss of 3.6 kilograms. Nobody gained weight. And so going through this, you can see we had the control group, and then the pink squares are those who started off with binge eating disorder. You can see they're generally much higher on some of the measures, most of the measures, but drop almost to the level of the non-bingers. This was a measure of what's called disinhibited eating. And that was the weight loss, exactly parallel. And then a measure of what's called cognitive restraint, healthy management of your eating, not over-restraint, and exactly the same. And again, the effects on weight loss. And we used the Toronto Mindfulness Scale, and we found huge increases in those who are in the MBE program. Just very quickly, I've also been interested in the value of the increase of spiritual well-being in any kind of mindfulness intervention. We found increases in meaning and peace, but with and that highly correlated to the depression and anxiety and the binge eating scale. And much more so than the other part of that measure, which was faith, though it still showed some significance. I'm going to jump ahead. You can see how the differences show up there, the green lines going up. Now, coming back to this really quickly, take out your circle. I'm just going to talk you through this because we're really out of time. What percentage of your day do you spend thinking about or worrying about your eating? And then, because we use this, it's very powerful. And what percentage of your day do you spend on your family, thinking about your family, your work, your hobbies, your friends? I'll let you just reflect on this yourselves. What we had found was that we would get people telling us 65%, 75% of their day was spent worrying about their bodies, their eating, their weight. Then when we asked them, okay, that only leaves 25% to look at all those other areas in your life. Aren't those important too? And there's always this stop. And they go, oh my God. And what they do when we ask them to come back in a week later with whether that number has changed, it's changed dramatically. And the worry about their eating, their weight, has gone down to maybe the 25%. And they actually feel, it's not just changing the numbers, they feel that they're opening up more of their time, more of their thinking to all those other parts of their important parts of their life. So I'm going to have to, I realize I'm going to have to skip through this. We also have run this study at a variation at University of San Francisco, University of California, San Francisco. We got, again, with no people with binge eating disorder, very comparable effects. So take-home messages, I think you've already heard. Mindful eating, enjoyment. Learn to cultivate the inner gourmet. I like to use that. And this is just a little bit of a couple of people involved in the study that I worked with. I've always been looking for whatever would help me do that without going on and off diets and putting all the weight back on. And I feel really comfortable now. This is going to be okay. I'm at peace at this point. Jane, I use meditation, mindfulness with everything. When I get upset at work, I go in the bathroom and do a mini meditation. Sometimes I count to 10, or I just breathe and I don't binge anymore at all. I mean, I really don't diet and I don't binge at all. And that's just a flash of my book that is available on Amazon. The Joy of Half a Cookie. I have a copy with me if you want to actually look at it. And when you find bliss, savor it.
네, 실습 체험까지 해볼 수 있던 유익한 강연 감사드립니다. 저희가 사전 접수를 받을 당시에 몇 가지 질문들도 사전에 함께 선정해 두었습니다. 지금 질문 드려보도록 하겠습니다. When you took pre-reservations for this event, we also collected questions in advance. I'd like to ask you one of those selected questions now. Is it okay? Question is, when someone struggles with self-criticism, what would be a good way to shift into self-confession? Sorry. First question is, do you have expectations for the mindful eating practice to expand beyond personal application when become part of public policies, such as health center programs, school lunch education, or the national awareness campaigns?
I think it could be brought into any of these. We have worked with children and with adolescents. We have a study that used teenagers, and they did improve in their eating in a high school environment, and had longer-term effects on some of these experiences than did the kids, the control group, which were children teenagers that just stayed in their regular health class. So I'm not sure I can say more about this because we don't have other programs going, but I'd be glad to work with anyone who was interested in doing that.